Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber ask a really interesting question, but I don't want to make the answer to this just about me because just me doesn't help all of you. So I want to discuss this for the wider audience and kind of what the various data out there shows and what the experts actually do know based upon that data. And quite a few experts that I know personally who I've spoken with about this who are registered dietitians and their work with various obese people. But this person is basically asking me about my own experiences with having used both high carb, low fat and low fat, high carb for fat loss and which one I found to be better. Now, I have in the past found the ketogenic style diet to be a very useful method of fat loss when I had been sedentary and been in bed sick. I had gained 100 pounds while I was sick, and I got out of bed and I lost the first 50, maybe 55 pounds. It was somewhere in that range. I can't remember the exact number, but somewhere in that ballpark, using a ketogenic diet and no actual weightlifting yet because I hadn't actually been given medical permission to start lifting again. So I was just doing walking and light cardio for the most part to burn through my calories while doing that. And it was very successful for that first 50 pounds. And I'm going to get to that in a minute of why that's actually important for other people in the demographics. Now, as far as now, I've switched over to a higher carb, lower fat diet, and I am finding that it produces better performance for me, and I've been recompositioning more effectively on it than when I was running the ketogenic diet. Now, what I want to point out there is that there's a very significant difference in me biologically since then. I am on TRT, I'm on prescription testosterone, and accordingly, I have slightly different biochemistry than when I was a sedentary individual. The thing that you need to remember is that TRT doses are going to give you a higher continual testosterone level on average than what most people will produce naturally. Yes, the peak number is going to be the same, but we know from certain studies on muscle growth and other stuff, it does give you a slight advantage. And because you have those continually elevated levels, you have slightly different needs, meaning you're going to get slightly superior nutrient partitioning. Well, what we mean by nutrient partitioning is that people on even low doses of anabolics, sometimes even therapeutic doses, tend to burn a little more fat and they store a little more glucose, meaning they're not converting that glucose into body fat, they tend to store a little more glucose in their muscle tissue. Well, that's going to give you a slightly better metabolic rate. It means you're going to burn less of the carbs that you eat. And it's going to give you a slight predisposition towards burning fat as a fuel source. You have to keep in mind the body's preferred and primary fuel source is always going to be glucose. It's going to be sugar. This shifts that slightly. And you have to factor in that people who are using exogenous hormones are less concerned with things like even hitting the minimum dietary fat intakes to maintain hormone production, because if they're putting testosterone in their body exogenously, even if it's at a therapeutic dose, they're not worried about going too low on fat of a diet, and they're certainly not going to benefit from any testosterone boost from eating any significant portion of fats. One of the things that is harped on as being a benefit of the ketogenic diet, although controversial and not fully proven, it is considered to be one of the touted benefits. Well, that completely goes away in that situation. It's a non-factor. So for me, I definitely noticed that I was able to perform better. I have more glucose in my muscle tissue. That had created a far more anabolic environment and a better performance environment. Well, if I'm able to perform better in the gym and gain more muscle, I'm obviously going to have a higher metabolic rate. I'm going to find it slightly easier to lose body fat. In fact, I've noticed, again, better recomposition doing that. But is that due to my natural state, or is that due to the androgens put in? I'm going to say it has more to do with the latter, because when I was completely clean, and particularly hadn't been sedentary, I found the ketogenic diet to be extremely effective. Now, there's reasons for that. Here's what we know based on the data with the various demographics and people. The majority of people, meaning around 3 out of 4, find it easier to lose body fat. They lose body fat more quickly with a higher carb, lower fat diet than they do with a high fat diet, the ketogenic style diet. 3/4. And we know that from studies. We can do it with DEXA scans. We can look at it. We can actually analyze their body composition in the metabolic ward. Yeah, the majority do. They simply lose more body fat. However, that's not always the only factor. Diet adherence is an absolutely enormous factor, probably the most important factor in any diet. And it appears that about 1/4 of the population have much better appetite control, much better energy levels, much better mood on a ketogenic style diet. If you're more consistent with your diet and you can maintain a better caloric intake more consistently on any given diet, even if that diet is technically biologically slightly inferior for fat loss, that doesn't matter because the diet adherence component and lower overall energy intake extended over time, over months, not just weeks, but months, is going to equal superior fat loss, even if the diet itself doesn't produce quite as effective of nutrient partitioning. So for people who find the ketogenic diet very effective for controlling appetite, those people are going to lose more body fat on it, even though biologically we found with the DEXA scans, calorie for calorie, the higher carb, lower fat diet produces slightly better body composition results. But that doesn't matter if you can't adhere to it. And there seems to be a larger factor there also. What we have found is that the majority of sedentary, morbidly obese people, the majority meaning over half, when we put them in a metabolic ward, and I qualified as that. I had gained 100 pounds almost, at least 100 pounds of fat, but I had lost muscle, so I had gained at least 100 pounds of fat. But I think my body weight had gone up about 60 pounds, and I had been sedentary for 10 months while in bed sick. So for me, I qualified as sedentary and morbidly obese at that point. Well, again, over half of people who are sedentary and morbidly obese, when we do DEXA scans on them, calorie per calorie, they actually lose more body fat on the ketogenic style diets than they do the higher carb approach. And it seems to have something to do, again, with the nutrient partitioning related to the insulin resistance component. Because when we study that and we find the ones who are insulin resistant and have metabolic syndrome, virtually all of them in that subcategory of sedentary and morbidly obese tend to lose more body fat on a ketogenic style diet. Then once they are no longer sedentary and they no longer have metabolic syndrome, then it shifts back over to a different portion of the population. However, a lot of those people tend to be the ones who still stay in that 1 in 4. But there is a better chance as they lose weight and they start getting closer to normalized body weights and they're now physically active, that they'll be able to function quite well on the higher carb, lower fat approach. But again, people who have been in that situation tend to, as a demographic, have a much higher chance of being in that total 1 in 4 people who still in the long term do better on ketogenic diets. And in my case, it seems to be the case that the long-term testosterone replacement therapy combined with me becoming very physically active, very intense high-frequency weight training, combined with daily cardio, again, the TRT, I seem to be thriving much, much better on the high carb, low fat approach now. But I did the absolute best on that ketogenic diet. When I did the ketogenic diet to lose that first 50 pounds coming out of that other situation, the weight loss was pretty quick, pretty dramatic, and I felt a lot better. So I fell into that other category and I've shifted categories. So the answer is, which one is better for me? Well, it depends on what state I was in. The question becomes, which one is better for you as a person? You're actually going to have to experiment, but the baseline is looking at your starting point. Since the majority of people who are only a bit overweight, they maybe need to lose 20, 30 pounds. We know, and they're active, we know that 3/4 of them are going to do better on a higher carb, lower fat diet. And only about 1 in 4 are going to do better on the ketogenic diet. And they'll know it if they go try a ketogenic diet, they get 2 weeks in to the full ketosis, they're adapted to doing the diet, and then they feel better, have better appetite control, better energy, better mood. That's the person who's going to do better on the ketogenic diet. If 3 weeks in they're still having brain fog and they're lethargic all the time, and they didn't have those same effects on the higher carb diet, they probably need to stick to the higher carb diet. On the other extreme, if you're sedentary and morbidly obese starting out, odds are the high fat, low carb diet, again, the ketogenic style diet, is statistically going to be the better choice for you. The majority of people in that situation are going to do better on it. So they should probably just go ahead and take the safe gamble and jump on the ketogenic style diet at that point. And then Once they've fallen out of the morbidly obese range, then they can start experimenting with more balanced diets. So that's my recommendations based just purely upon the data, the research, and the number of registered dietitians that I've met over the years who work with obese clients. That's the recommendations I've got from them that I've compiled over the years, combined with my own experience and my own looking at the data and research. So that's coming from a number of different sources for me to arrive at those conclusions. But I think those are good general rules to stick to. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.